Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Wisdom Seeker Live podcast, first edition of the new year and the anniversary edition, if you will. It's been a whole year since we started the podcast, and really grateful for where we've come and all of you that are engaged and involved. Thank you. And I'm looking forward to another year, God willing, to seek and grow wisdom together with you all. And in fact, next week we're going to have a special guest, Rachel Beck. Looking forward to that. Welcome, Rick. Glad to have you from Kentucky. Appreciate you having become a regular with us. And our topic today is going to be letting go. I was inspired in regards to this with some of my posts in and around New Year's and the challenge that people face with the new year and New Year resolutions, and just realizing that one of the reasons that so many find it difficult to have New Year's resolutions and actually stick to them is because having trouble of letting go. Welcome, Zaid. Glad to see you. Rosemary, so good to see you. And want to wish everyone, by the way, a happy New Year. Very grateful for all of you. Welcome, Jane, and your support and encouragement and participation in the podcast. And so thank you for that. Appreciate y'all joining. Others that join, please let us know where you're joining from so that we can get to know you, and then also add in comments and questions along the way. That makes the podcast even more interesting. And as I always do, I like to just outline a little bit about how we see wisdom here on the podcast. And we see wisdom as a journey, and it's got three steps in that journey, or three steps in the process. First one is about gaining knowledge, and that's something we can do as a product of just living. We can also pursue knowledge in terms of formal education and informal education. Challenges too many will stop with knowledge. And in fact, there has been people that have thought of knowledge as power. And I personally challenge that concept, because if you can get knowledge and can't do anything with it, it's not very powerful. The next step in the process of seeking wisdom is that we have to take the knowledge we gain and begin to internalize it, or gain understanding of it. And that comes from experience and things going well. It comes from being intentional in gaining experience. And so that's the second step in the process. The last step, which is the one that is quite often missed and is critical in this process, is when we go into gaining wisdom. And wisdom is seeing things, in simplest form, it's seeing things from a much bigger perspective, and especially outside of ourselves, not just what our decisions mean to us, but how they affect others and how they affect the world around us, and so on. And for those of us that are of a spiritual bent, that involves, as we would say it, is seeing things through God's eyes. And that helps us to make better choices, because we don't get so internal, so self-centered, that we don't understand the world beyond ourselves. So that's how we look at wisdom. And welcome, Satish. Glad to have you. And John, appreciate Charles. Good to have you. Sandas, been a while. Glad to have you with us. Appreciate all of you being here. And again, look forward to your questions and comments. So, letting go. It's an interesting topic. I think it is a challenge that we face. And as always, I like to do a little digging around and see what the world or outside perspectives think of topics as we introduce them. And so I did a search through Google on the topic of letting go, and what came up was rather interesting. So I'm going to pop that up here. Let me expand that screen. I know sometimes it can be hard to see when it's so small. So interesting. I always like to look at images, and because I'm a visual learner, I suppose. And but it shows. I like this one especially as letting go, breaking chains. And it's just, to me, helpful to see that. And I also was really interested to see that there are some definitions, if you will, and I thought that was insightful. I'll go back to that. And this was really insightful to me, or kind of confirmed what I was thinking. But to stop thinking about or being angry about the past or something that happened, and letting go of the past. And so it's just real insightful. And I also looked at this as well, and it talks about some steps in letting go. So it's an interesting topic, easy to talk about, but it is challenging to deal with. I was especially mindful of it in a recent poll that I did on the topic of New Year's resolutions. And I asked the question if people were ready to let go of 2021 and move on to 2022. And I was very, not very surprised, but I was at least interested in seeing some of the results. And I'm looking away from the screen over to my other screen. Wanted to bring up that information and let you see some of the results. It was pretty interesting. And so let me expand that, and we'll bring it up on screen. And I'm kind of curious if you all are surprised by the responses. Let me get that a little bit bigger so that you guys can see it. And I'll get to your comments. I'm interested in hearing what your thoughts are. Let's see here. Well, there we go. The question was, are you ready, willing, and able to learn and let go of 2021? Pleasantly, 93% said yes. But some said, 5% said no, not ready. And I even asked, okay, are any of you needing help with it? And 2% yes. And that's out of over 1,100 votes. So it's at least indicative of things going on. It's not a scientific poll. Good morning, Gabe. Glad to have you with us. Appreciate your support and being here. And so there are people that struggle with letting go. And it has become kind of a common knowledge that people struggle with with New Year's resolutions. And there's a number of factors in it, I believe. But I think one of them is still indeed that people have trouble with letting go. I know that with our current environment, the uh, situation with the pandemic, that people are going to struggle with letting go of that out of fear. So, Rosemary, I understand. I know it's late where you are, and I appreciate you making the effort to be here, especially on the first year anniversary. You've been such a support and part. I hope you get rest, and indeed that you have an amazing new year and blessed and joy filled, just like you have offered us. And keep watching. Going to do some more friendlier time zones for my friends there in Australia and other areas of the world. And also, I appreciate you being there. God bless, and we'll talk to you later. So let me get to some comments here. Zaid offers that it is letting go is a very important topic and issue. Thank you. Rick says life is a short period of time. Time is too precious to hang on to something you can't change. Key point there, and we'll talk about it a little bit, is dealing with what we can change and what we can't. And appreciate Atif, and if I mispronounce it, please excuse me. Appreciate you being here, Atif, and joining in. Feel free to comment and offer suggestions, ask questions. So letting go. It's real interesting. One analogy that I've always heard about letting go, and it really paints a good picture, is it's hard to hold on to one thing and try to grasp something else. I know when I deal with groceries and things like that, I always like to make as few trips as possible. And as a result, I end up with multiple bags on each hand. And that works most of the time, but sometimes I end up with problems because you can only hold so much at one time. Same analogy. When we start holding on to things in the past, we're going to find it hard to grasp on to new things. And it creates a real challenge. So one of the things that I think is a key to a lot of our inability to let go has to do with forgiveness. And there are two aspects of forgiveness, and that is giving it and receiving it. And I talk with people, and I share very regularly about forgiving. And I think it is one of the key characteristics, by the way, to being an effective leader. And we've got to be able to exercise forgiveness. And I think part of the challenge there is we think of forgiveness as something that we have to feel. And I appreciate the value of the feelings related to forgiveness, but quite often, and most of the time, forgiveness has to be a choice first. And when we learn to choose forgiveness for ourselves and for others, it can make such a difference, very freeing. And one of the things that we need to focus in on is forgiving ourselves first. I know as part of my journey, spiritual journey, is that I had to first receive forgiveness through faith by grace. And that was a hard step. And when I made it, though, it made such a difference in my life that it's remarkable that I made that choice coming up on, by the way, 50 years ago. And so forgiveness is just such a key. And if we're going to be excellent at most anything, we're going to have to forgive. And especially if we're going to be a leader, we definitely have to forgive. And that starts with forgiving ourselves. It's absolutely necessary to do that. And I know that almost sounds kind of silly about trying to forgive ourselves, but there are a lot of people that are living with guilt and are unwilling and unable to forgive themselves for it. And it truly ties them down, it truly restricts them. And so, understanding about choosing to forgive, including ourselves, is so key. Welcome, MD, and welcome, Daniel. Glad to have you with us. And so, as we're continuing, we're talking about letting go, and a part of letting go for us needs to be letting go of guilt through receiving forgiveness. And the challenge is that sometimes we don't understand that forgiveness is something that we have to accept in order for it to be effective. And it can be a struggle because to forgive ourselves, also we have to acknowledge we did something that needs forgiveness. So again, I'm not talking about letting go being easy. In fact, if it was easy, more people would have let go and would have gotten free sooner, and we would not see so many people struggling within themselves because of the of what happens when we hold on to the past. Welcome, Aaron. Glad to have you with us. So letting go starts, in my opinion, when we receive forgiveness for ourselves and go through that process. And that can be, at moments, it can be emotionally painful to do so. And excuse me. And so I really encourage people to consider letting go and starting with forgiveness. And Zaid comments, I think mostly is how much we emotionally attach to the subject matter that we're trying to let go. The more we're attached to it, the harder it is to let go. Indeed, in fact, I think there's another element of it. Thank you, Zaid, for the 50th anniversary of my faith step. And but yes, we've got to let go, and the more emotionally attached or emotionally charged, because quite often we don't forgive because we don't want to deal with the emotional pain that it takes to address it. I know in my life, years ago, I realized that I dealt with an emotional wound related to family, in particular my father. And when I began to address it, it hurt. I mean, to a point of involving tears. Welcome, Ed Mario. Glad to have you with us. It involved a lot of pain because of having to unearth or dig up some of those pains. But what had happened was I was pushed because that letting go or not letting go was causing me problems in other ways, including in working relationships. And so the emotional aspect of letting go is a big deal. And part of what I had to do again was to revisit the idea of forgiving or receiving forgiveness. And that's especially a challenge when the object of uh, the offended party, shall we say, doesn't even ask us to forgive, or I'm sorry, we don't get to ask the offending party about forgiveness and ask their forgiveness. And sometimes we even have people that are completely unaware that it's even an issue. Welcome, Dr. Jesmond. Glad to have you. So, letting go of those past by receiving forgiveness is a step. The other is once we know how to receive forgiveness and experience it, we then begin to consider giving forgiveness. And this one can be difficult as well, because there are times that people that have hurt us, offended us, caused emotional response may not even know they've done it, and they certainly haven't asked for forgiveness. And so, what we need to do is not necessarily for their benefit, because they may never know, but we have to take the effort to give that forgiveness. And many times that's going to be a choice. Emotionally, we're still not happy with that person, we're hurt by that person, whatever. In my particular case, I was fortunate that the what I had to deal with was related to growing up, which many times it is, by the way. I was fortunate enough to be able to have conversations with my parents, and uh, first of all, let them know of that hurt and the effects of it. And what's really interesting is, like most situations, they weren't aware that there was even an issue. Once we started talking about it, they asked my forgiveness, and then I was able to ask their forgiveness, and we began the process of working through it. And that's ideally the way it should work. We don't always get that option, so we have to work through that process solo, if you will. Welcome, Karen. Glad to have you. Happy New Year. So, letting go many times involves forgiveness, and we have to make those choices and go through the process. But, as painful as it can be, and the struggle is very real, that's why many people are still stuck holding on to things they shouldn't, past issues. And so, very important we learn how to go beyond that. And I again comment that it is necessary if you're going to be a leader and work with people much. It just really becomes necessary to do that. So letting go, one aspect of letting go is to make the choice to give forgiveness and receive forgiveness. And sometimes we have to do that even if we are not asked to forgive, or we do not get to ask others to forgive. And thank you, Ed Mario, for the blessings that you share. And thank you, Karen. I appreciate that, the recognition of that time in my life of making a step of faith. So, more about letting go. And by the way, I'd love to hear from you guys if you have stories of letting go and how it impacted you. I think this year is going to be a challenge, because letting go related to the pandemic is going to be a challenge, because we keep getting it put in our face. We keep getting reminded about the pandemic. And I think that we quite often are. The reason we don't let go is because we're so curious about things. And what we don't understand is satisfying that curiosity has to be done in a healthy fashion, because to sit and just consume information, especially that's just other people's opinions in regards to all that, as is a tough thing. And if we don't if we don't make a choice not to get inundated with it, we're going to have a real difficult time to letting go of that. And what happens is that's how we start building and living in unhealthy fear. So making a choice as to what kind of input we get into our life, into our minds and our emotions, is another way to begin to let go. If we have people that are influencing our life and inputting into our life that are unhealthy, and we choose not to disconnect from that, then we have created a problem for ourselves that causes us not to be able to let go of those emotions. And emotions, by the way, are great. I appreciate that. But at times they can be a very harsh taskmaster. And some of us are more prone to being affected by emotions than others. And that's understandable. So it may be more difficult for those to let go of some of those emotions, make those choices. Let's see here. Comment from Rick. Being able to let go makes one a better person. I agree. It is really important to be able to do that. And then Rick also comments, don't let others rain on your parade. I agree. And I believe that in our current culture, we allow raining on our parade to happen, and it's by our choice. Whereas if we make the right choices, we avoid standing in the rain and our parade getting rained out, if you will. So again, good thoughts to consider. And what you're bringing up is actions, choices that we need to make. And let's see here. Aaron makes comments. I let go of small issues in relationships like last minute cancellations. People get surprised that I don't get upset, but why waste energy on small issues? I agree with you, Aaron. It's a good comment and a good insight. And what happens to some of us is we hold on to a lot of small issues. And, for example, if you try to pick up coins, and you can pick up many coins and still function with your hands, but it gets to a point, if you hold enough coins in your hands, you can't hold on to anything else. So those small issues, if we allow them to go unaddressed, indeed, what will happen is that we will miss the opportunity to hold on to good things that we should hold on to. And let's see here. I'm trying to keep up with your comments. By the way, I'm really grateful that you guys are making comments, because they add so much to what we're talking about. So letting go of small things. Good comment. Satish makes a comment that emotions have to be kept under control. That only enables you to be at peace with yourself. And that is a factor. One of the principles that we have to learn, and that we're told is wise, is self-control. And part of self-control is to be able to, when we have emotions come in at inappropriate times or inappropriate ways, or for inappropriate reasons, that we are able to not allow them to take over and cause us to say, do, be things that we shouldn't. So definitely that control is of value. Satish also comments, the philosophy of yoga teaches us how to control our emotions. What it means is that you remain human, but if there are any challenges, you face those challenges bravely. Certainly, what yoga does is help us to focus and make choices to focus in the right direction. And it is certainly valuable in the process of letting go. That's why I don't know I don't think any of you were with me for the first episode a year ago of the Wisdom Seeker Live podcast. But one of the things that we kicked that off with was a practice that I believe that is beneficial to us. And the more we see turmoil around us, the more important this practice is. And that practice is to disconnect from the noise, whatever that noise is for us. For many of us, most of us, I believe, the noise is the media, especially news media, but including at times social media. And so that first part of that practice is to let go of those things, to disconnect from them, turn them off, whatever that looks like. But by the way, isn't just tied to that. It may be that for a time we have to disconnect in a relationship or a job, even whatever, but disconnect. Next step is begin to observe inwardly, observe outwardly, and to truly consider what is going on in us and outside of us and around us. And then once we are intentional, key is that we are observing regularly, but this type of observation has to be very intentional and very thoughtful. And once we start observing what is really happening around us and understanding that, the next step is to be able to seek and gain wisdom in regards to that something or those somethings, and to begin to grow in those and find wisdom in regard to them, which means not just looking at it from our vantage point, but looking at it from a much bigger picture. And hopefully, if you're spiritually minded, that you begin to see things from God's perspective or as our creator, and viewing your circumstances, viewing people through the lens of that. And which is an important factor there is that the primary character of God is love. And when we begin to see things through that lens, it really changes our perspective a great deal. And let's see, Zaid makes a comment, says there's a series of books titled Don't Sweat Small Things in Life, Work, Relations, etc. I think it's important for each of us to understand the real size of what we're letting go and what we will gain instead. Indeed, in fact, one of the principles that we talk about, Anton and I talk about on the Human SOS show all the time, is being sure if we're trying to move away from something, not focusing on what we're moving away from, but focus on what we're moving towards. And as we struggle to let go, we need to look forward to what can we grasp, what can we take hold of that will benefit us positively going forward. And so that's a very important part that we have to consider and see the benefits that we reap by letting go of these things. I always remember an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. One of the things we need to do is to understand that we can avoid holding on to things if we live intentionally and we gain wisdom, because part of wisdom is as we see the bigger picture, we see more about consequences. We see more about how we get to places that we desire not to be. And as a result, we begin to learn how to, as we do that, we begin to learn how to avoid getting a hold of things that we shouldn't have grasped hold of to start with. So another part, let's see, a TFAS question says, how to let go when you feel that you have been treated unfairly. Yeah, I understand that, Tiff. And I've been there. I've done that many times. And I have experienced both sides of holding on to it and then of also learning to let go. And the key there is a choice to forgive people that have done you that way. And that's hard because they may never ask or even understand it. But when we make a choice to forgive them, and sometimes we have to just say it out loud. I've known of people that the way they have been able to let go of it is to write it down, write down what they felt, what they feel, what happened, and write it down on a piece of paper, and as if you were going to write a letter to that person, and then take it and either just wad it up and throw it in the trash, or even safely start a small fire, burn the paper, whatever. But it starts with choosing, and part of the reason we want to choose is that, for me, part of it is it's a tenet of my faith to forgive people, because I know I've been forgiven by people, forgiven by my Heavenly Father, but I know I have been given grace to have been forgiven by other people. And then with that in mind, to say, okay, if I've been forgiven, I should forgive others, and make that choice. Plus, I hope people understand, and if you've ever experienced that situation where you have maybe justification in your mind to really hold on to hurt from people, and you've ever finally said, okay, I need to let go of this, and it's not necessarily for them, it's for us. And when you finally get there and you finally are able to make that choice, the freedom that you experience when you do that is truly, truly remarkable. And I've seen people that once they were able to let go by forgiving, it changed their whole demeanor. It changed their life. I know for me, I mentioned a 50-year anniversary coming up. A key part there was me receiving forgiveness, and the freedom in getting that forgiveness and the life-changing nature of it is truly remarkable. So the question you ask is, how do we let go when we feel that we were treated unfairly? First of all, you have to make a choice and truly look at it and consider it. Secondly, then you have to be able to say, I've been forgiven, so I will forgive. And then once you have experienced the freedom of that, it makes the next time around easier. And there's a saying that makes me think about this, and it says, the saying is, except for the grace of God, there go I. And so when we start looking at people and have bad feelings or hurt feelings towards them, and we can begin to say, if it weren't for grace and forgiveness and mercy for me, that could be me. And in fact, I know I have been on the giving end of some of that at times. And once I realized it and received forgiveness, it makes me a lot more likely to let go and forgive. Welcome, Uday. Glad to have you with us. So I hope I answered your question, Atef. It's a hard choice, but once you've ever experienced the freedom of forgiving and letting go, it really, really makes a huge difference. So the next concept in letting go, one of the things that we feel like we truly want to have happen is we want to be in control of our life, and we want to feel like that we can affect things in our lives, make them better, keep them from getting bad, different things like that. And I understand it's a natural tendency is to want to control. But I have to say, having been around here for a long time, more and more, I find that I'm around longer than most of the people around me. And what I have found is that I control very little. And it's not for lack of trying. I can be a very determined person when it comes to things, and can try really hard to take control where I can. And so it's a struggle to come to terms with what I can really and truly control in my life. So, another exercise that I would offer in letting go is to go do a little exercise with yourself and uh, ask yourself, can I truly control something, whatever it is? For example, we want to get control over our selves in terms of what's going on with the pandemic. And what if you really stop and think about all of this, what you can control is very small. And primarily, what you can control is your choices as to how you respond. And so the exercise is, ask yourself, can I control this, whatever this is? And really evaluate it. And if we can't, then we have to ask a second question. And the second question is, what can we influence it? And influence is fine. And sometimes we can influence things. More times than not, the bigger influence that we can have is on how we respond. But there are times, for example, some people get caught up and really passionate about wanting to deal with hunger. And so what happens is, can the person control it to a point to eradicate hunger? Not very likely, but they can influence it. For example, they can take time to buy and give food to hungry people, or they can help raise awareness, whatever. So they can influence it. So if you can control it and influence it, you make plans accordingly to deal with it. And what I find, though, is the things in our life that fall into those two categories are pretty small, percentage wise. And mostly what we find is we can't control it, we can't influence it. So what's the other option? And the other option is to let go. And we recognize that we can't control it and we can't influence it. And so to continue trying to control or influence it is a form of holding on. It's a form of not letting go. And what happens is, it can consume us. It can cause great deals of stress for us by holding on and continuing to try to do something with it. And that's why I suggest, by the way, what we allow inputs into our mind, into our heart, can be a factor. And quite often, what we're doing by exposing ourselves to some of these situations and some of this information is we are being inundated with information and emotions about things we can't control, nor can we influence it. So truly be sure to be mindful of that. Ask those questions, go through that exercise, and I suggest that it's something that we do on a very regular basis. So definitely need to begin to ask ourselves the question: if I can't control it, if I can't influence it, then make choices to let go. And sometimes that's hard because we're so accustomed to the process of allowing that to happen to us, that information to be put into our heads and into our lives, that we don't have ability or the space or the energy to control them. And I know, Ed Mario, you've raised a point in regards to pandemic and some of the challenges and the value of taking different steps. And we've had some discussions about this. My advice to anyone, especially in regards to this, is quit listening to the media and what's going on, and go through that process. Disconnect, observe, and gain wisdom. And if you do some research, you can find out information that helps us make personal choices to be as safe as possible without sacrificing our complete freedom. And that's the challenge. And I know many of us are praying for the wisdom to be found in regards to all of this. In the meantime, I will tell you my experience, and it's my opinion only, but challenge it. But I find that much of what is being pushed at us is incomplete, inaccurate, and sometimes outright lies in regards to all of this. Research it, go, and rather than listen to people's opinion about things from the CDC, for example, go read the information for yourself. And what I find is most times when we do that, we get a whole different picture than what people are telling us by their interpretation of what it says. So certainly something that we all need to pray about, that we are praying about, and that we will need to continue to pray about. Moving forward, let's see, Zaid, part of why to journal is the idea that we get out of those negative emotions of our mind into a different medium, the paper, computer. First steps is to get things out of ourselves, then to ponder what happens. Learn from the experience, then let it go. Yes, that is a good exercise. I have found people that are challenged with sleeping. Sometimes the way that they are able to indeed be able to get rest is if they find themselves, their mind turning over and over, keeping them from sleeping, then they take out a journal or type on the computer, whatever works to jot things down and maybe come back to them. It's easy to let go of them. So that's a good exercise, is whatever that looks like, though, the key is to be intentional to face it and to address it. Don't just ignore it. Many times our problem is we don't want to face it and we think it's no big deal. And after a while, just like I believe it was Aaron that commented about letting go of small things, that if we don't let go of those things, then indeed what happens is that after a while goes from being a lot of little things build up to be a big thing, and it begins to affect us. And so, yes, it's a good exercise indeed to do that, journaling, writing down, whatever process works for us. Part for me is if something's really bothering me, in addition, I will also start praying about it and really trying to learn how to let go of it and turn it over to God, let Him take care of it. Let's see, Zaid says, Kevin, there's a positive thing in that being older than others. You're my top of the pyramid, only the greats. Oh, I thank you, Zaid. You're kind. And I appreciate that. Part of the reason I think that I have been called to do this podcast is just to share what I have experienced, and to share it not out of selfish motivation, not to gain anything, but rather to give what I have gained. And hopefully, and not just hopefully, I know for a fact that as we've gathered together, I have gained wisdom from all of you. And that's the beauty of having a regular time together, so that we can gain wisdom easier than having to gain it the hard way. Because sometimes gaining wisdom can be very difficult, be very painful. And so learning to from others has great value. Yes, Atif, this is recorded so people can be able to see it. In fact, I will post a link afterwards on my my posting page, how to find it, and hopefully others can benefit from it as well. And Zaid makes a very profound comment. Letting go ASAP is better than internalizing things into bitterness. One of the things that I've learned from the Bible is it tells me that to not forgive others and hold on to it, and can develop a root of bitterness. And I don't know if you've ever been around someone that has truly become bitter. It is almost tangible when you're around that person. You can almost feel it without even knowing it. And I had a situation years ago where I was in actually in a market, a grocery store, and encountered a gentleman, and I didn't know the man, and didn't even especially recognize him, but I could just sense that the man was angry and bitter, and it was just almost like you could touch it. And what I realized later is that this gentleman happened to be a angry, bitter white supremacist that had done some very terrible things. He happened to live in the area of town that I lived in, but that anger and bitterness that drove him to do some of the things he did was just, like I said, almost like you could touch it. And and it's a sad state. It's truly, truly sad. And that's good reason, if no other reason, not to hold on to things, not to be unforgiving, because ultimately, that unforgiveness, that bitterness, that anger is like, best analogy I've ever heard, it's like drinking poison, thinking about somebody in the hopes that it's going to harm them, and all it does is harm us. So yes, letting go immediately as often as possible is very essential. Sometimes, Rick, yes, distancing works. Stay clear. Yeah, there are some times that we choose not to get away from sources of issues for us that cause us to hold on and not be able to let go because it's in our face all the time. Sometimes that's in relationships. And again, I know I'm sounding like a broken record, but that's part of what we're doing currently by continually allowing the news media to just beat us up mentally and emotionally all the time. I am amazed now how long I went with allowing that to be an influence in my life, to a point now that when, for example, I watch very little live TV anymore. Anything that I happen to consume on TV for entertainment, it is streamed or it's pre-recorded, whatever. But when I happen to decide to watch something on live television, I find that within minutes that all of a sudden start getting anxious. I start getting very tense, and to a point that I just have to get up and walk away, or I will find myself reacting, and it's not healthy for me at all and unnecessary. Around the holidays, we like to watch parades and things like that, which is fun and enjoyable, have a lot of memories there. But we were doing this over the holidays. And every time we did that, I found myself, because I have disconnected to a point that I'm not accustomed to that influence like that. And so when I get around it, my whole demeanor changes. And by the way, I'm not talking about, please don't take this as hiding your head in the sand, pretend like the world isn't where it is. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about choosing to be well informed and not told what you need to think. So, um, Erin comments that my family member sadly is very bitter, and she's praying for him daily. Yes. Again, letting go. Yoga was mentioned. I believe Satish, I think, mentioned that, and it's a great way. Prayer is a great way to let go of things, because as we invest in that effort and through those processes, we do all that we can do, and we realize by those actions that we've done all that we can do, then it's much more likely to be able to let go of it. And the value of prayer quite often is it's always to help others, but it's also to help us and help us to do what we can to influence what's going on to a point that we can then let go and be at peace. I know I pray regularly for lots of people, and do so. Again, what's really great about it is I know it has a positive benefit to the people I pray for, but I benefit from it as well, and I get blessed from it. So continue praying for that family, and it makes a difference in people's lives, and I know it makes a difference in our lives, so that we can truly be at a point of letting go and being able to move forward. So we're running out of time. Boy, great comments today. Appreciate all of you being here. And as we move forward, I pray for you all that you begin to learn to let go, and including let go quickly, because as we recognize those things that are going to get us tangled up, and that's part of wisdom, is recognizing those sooner and letting go of them quickly. But learn to let go, free your hands up to grasp what's in front of you rather than holding on to what's behind you. Quite often, we keep holding on to the past, and as a result, we can't move forward. And someone said, yes, but we've got to learn from the past. Indeed, we've got to learn from the past. The past is a great teacher for us. And as we gain wisdom, by the way, a lot of it is looking backwards. But what we have to be sure of is that we look backwards to learn, but we look forward to where we're going to live and be. And that's such a key. Don't live trying to live in the past. And one way, by the way, some people get caught up trying to live in the past is, as parents, I see this where we've made mistakes in the past. And rather than helping our children learn from those mistakes, we try to correct our mistakes in our children. And it's a disservice to us and them as well. So I pray that you all will be able to start letting go, hold on to the things you can control and that you can influence, get a plan of how to deal with them, but otherwise just let go and turn it over to God to handle it. Because if we continue to try to control and influence things we can't, then we're going to be harmed by it. We're the ones that's going to suffer physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. So again, I pray that you gain wisdom how to let go, when to let go, when to never take hold, and grow forward in this new year. Got an opportunity to move forward encouraged, which by the way, I think it interesting, the word encouragement, the middle part of that is courage. So I pray that you become encouraged this year, that you're able to walk in courage rather than fear, and that the new year will bring you opportunities to truly be who you are designed to be, and do so with great purpose and passion. So thanks, everyone. Appreciate you being here. God bless. Have an amazing new year. And I look forward, by the way, Next week, we'll be back, same time, with a guest, Rachel Beck, and I think you'll enjoy hearing from Rachel. She's quite a notable person on LinkedIn, and she's got a lot of things to offer. So take care. God bless. Have an amazing week. Join us next week. Bring friends, and we'll grow in wisdom together.